Have you ever made a decision, felt totally confident, like right in the moment, only to look back later and think, wow, I missed something completely obvious?
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe you've seen other people make choices that seemed, well, maybe less than rational.
Happens all the time.
Our minds are incredible, truly, but they also come packed with some surprising quirks, these mental shortcuts, and even what Kahneman calls illusions built right in.
Mm-hmm.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into the groundbreaking work of a Nobel laureate who really peered into how we humans make judgments.
Yeah, and what's truly revolutionary here isn't just about pointing out errors we make now and then. It's understanding the fundamental systems, often unconscious ones, that guide, well, pretty much every single choice we make.
Right.
Daniel Kahneman, through all his research, showed us it's not about being stupid or, irrational in a bad way. It's just about how our minds are wired. We make fast judgments. They're just not always accurate.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our mission today is to introduce you to the two main characters in your minds, psychodrama, let's call them. These two systems of thinking. We'll explore how they work together, how they sometimes clash, and how they can lead us astray, often without us even realizing it. So yeah, prepare for some serious aha moments. I think this could genuinely change how you see your own decisions and maybe other people's too.
Definitely.
So what does this actually mean for how we think day to day? Kahneman talks about these two metaphorical agents in our minds, system 1 and system 2.
Right.
Think of them like two, very different employees handling the same job, making sense of the world. What makes them so different?
Well, system 1 is your fast thinking. It's intuitive, automatic, often emotional. It just happens effortlessly without you consciously controlling it.
Okay.
So when you instantly see an emotion on someone's face or you just know the answer to 2 plus 2, that's system 1. It also makes these really quick connections. Like if you read the words vomit and sick, you might have a slight, maybe even physical reaction.
Yeah, a little shudder maybe.
Exactly. That's system 1. It's always running in the background, making basic judgments, keeping an eye on things. It's kind of the secret author of a lot of our choices.
So system 1 is like the super efficient, always-on assistant.
Okay.
But what happens when things get tricky? When those quick answers just aren't enough, that's when we have to consciously step in.
Precisely. That's when system 2 gets called up. It's your slow, effortful, deliberate, logical reasoning.
Okay.
Think about the mental energy you need to solve, say, 17 times 24.
Right, yeah, I'd have to stop and actually think about that one.
Exactly. Or searching your memory for, capital cities, starting with the letter N. System 2 is mobilized for those difficult tasks, the complex calculations. Or, importantly, when system 1 runs into a surprise, something that just doesn't fit its usual pattern.
And we all kind of feel that system 2 has limits, don't we? Like, remember being a passenger when the driver is doing something tricky? Like overtaking a truck on a narrow road?
Yeah.
Everyone in the car just instinctively goes quiet.
Right.
We know, don't distract the driver. And you sort of suspect they're temporarily deaf anyway because they're so focused.
Yeah.
That's system 2 hogging all the resources, isn't it?
It's a perfect example. And the famous invisible gorilla experiment shows this dramatically. Yeah. People are told to count basketball passes for one team. And they often completely fail to see a person in a gorilla suit walking right through the middle of the players.
Wow. Still amazing.
Because System 2's focused attention makes us effectively blind to other things. Keeping up that task set, like counting, takes continuous effort. You can even track it physically, like with pupil dilation. Harder, longer mental tasks make your pupils get bigger.
What's really striking then is that System 2, which we think of as our logical, rational self, it's actually, kind of lazy.
That's a key insight, yeah. It prefers to conserve mental energy. So often, it just accepts the intuitive suggestions from System 1 without really checking them too closely.
The path of least resistance.
Exactly. Kahneman calls it the law of least effort. We generally try to avoid mental overload. So System 2 can step in and correct System 1, but a lot of the time it just doesn't bother. And that leaves us open to System 1's quick, but sometimes flawed judgments.
Okay, that makes sense. It sets the stage for why we make mistakes even when we think we're being careful. We all know about visual illusions, right? Like that Miller-Lyer one where the lines look different lengths, but they're actually the same. But Kahneman shows us there are also these powerful cognitive illusions of thought that can seriously mess with our judgments. What's one of the big ones?
Well, a really common one comes from the availability heuristic.
Yeah.
Basically, we judge how frequent or probable something is based on how easily examples spring to mind.
Okay, so
Like if you see a dramatic news report about a house fire, or maybe even see one yourself,
right.
that vivid image makes house fires seem much more common, much more probable in your mind than just reading a dry statistic about fire safety.
Ah, I see. The vivid stuff sticks.
Exactly. Recent events, things that are emotionally charged, things that are easy to picture, they feel more frequent or likely just because they're more available in our memory. It's not about the actual stats. It's about the ease of recall.
So our brains are basically prioritizing dramatic stories over, well, actual data. And this isn't just individual, is it? It can kind of spread.
Oh, absolutely. It can lead to what Kahneman and others call an availability cascade.
Okay.
Think about big public scares, maybe like the Love Canal incident or the Alar scare with apples years ago, media coverage, maybe some really emotional images.
Like those empty baby coffins mentioned in the book.
Exactly. Powerful stuff like that. It amplifies the perceived risk way beyond the statistical reality. And this can lead to, an exaggeration of minor threats and sometimes big policy changes that aren't necessarily proportional to the actual danger. Terrorism is another example. It speaks directly to System 1's fear response. It generates this intense feeling of risk, even though, statistically speaking, many other everyday things are far more dangerous for most people.
So these vivid, available stories can hijack public perception and even policy. That's quite something.
It is.
Okay, now another shortcut that I find absolutely fascinating is the anchoring effect. I feel like I see this everywhere once you know about it.
It's incredibly pervasive, yeah. When we have to estimate something, like a number or a price, our estimate tends to stay really close to any initial value we've been exposed to, even if that initial value is completely random.
Like the Wheel of Fortune experiment.
Exactly. People spin a Wheel of Fortune, get a random number, say 10 or 65. Then they're asked to estimate the percentage of African nations in the UN. Those who saw the number 10 estimated, on average, around 25%. Those who saw 65 estimated around 45%. That totally arbitrary number pulled their estimates way up or down.
Wow. So even if you know the number is random, it still anchors your thinking.
Pretty much. Your System 2 might try to adjust away from the anchor, but the adjustment is often insufficient. Think about negotiations, the first offer thrown out. That's a powerful anchor.
Right, sets the whole range. Or house prices. A high listing price makes the house seem more valuable, even if you think it's overpriced.
Precisely. You're aware of the anchor, but you don't realize just how much it's boxing in your judgment. System 1 grabs onto it, and System 2 doesn't fully correct.
Okay, so availability, anchoring.
Yeah.
What else is System 1 doing?
Well, it also heavily uses representativeness. That means judging the probability of something based on how well it matches a stereotype or a typical example in our minds.
So how representative it seems.
Exactly. And the danger here is that we often ignore really important statistical information, like base rates, how common something actually is overall.
And the famous Linda problem is the classic example here, isn't it?
It's the perfect illustration. So Linda's described as, philosophy major, deeply concerned with social justice, participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations.
Okay, got the picture.
Then people are asked, which is more probable, that Linda is a bank teller or that Linda is a feminist bank teller?
And most people say?
Overwhelmingly, people say feminist bank teller.
Even though, logically, the group of feminist bank tellers has to be smaller than the group of all bank tellers.
Exactly. It's a basic rule of probability. But the description of Linda fits the stereotype of a feminist so well, System 1 jumps to that conclusion. It feels more representative, more coherent, even though it's less probable.
We just love a good story, don't we? Even if it defies logic.
We really do. It overrides the cold statistics.
Okay, so System 1 is building these quick, coherent stories based on whatever information is easily available. Kahneman calls this, what you see is all there is, or WYSIAD.
Right, WYSIAD.
Which, it helps us think fast, right? Make sense of a complicated world with incomplete info. But it also seems to be a major source of, overconfidence. How does that work when we look back at things?
Yeah, WYSIAD is a big contributor to what he calls the narrative fallacy, and also hindsight bias. We look back at the past and we tell ourselves these neat, simple, causal stories. Stories that emphasize skill, maybe intentions, clever plans, and they really downplay the massive role that luck and randomness often play.
Making it seem like it was all predictable.
Exactly. We develop this feeling that we understand what happened. But Kahneman argues, pretty convincingly, that if you couldn't predict it before it happened, that feeling of understanding you have after it happened is largely an illusion.
Like the Google success story, maybe? In hindsight, it looks like this perfectly executed plan.
Right. It seems like inevitable genius. But there were countless moments, countless decisions, huge amounts of luck involved that could have easily gone the other way. Our storytelling brain just smooths it all out afterwards. And this false sense of understanding the past leads directly to overconfidence about predicting the future.
And that false understanding, that hindsight bias, can lead to some pretty unfair judgments of people's past decisions, can it?
Oh, definitely. It leads straight into outcome bias.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to blame decision makers for choices that were perfectly reasonable at the time, but just happened to turn out badly due to unforeseen circumstances or bad luck. And conversely, we often give too little credit for successful moves that only look obvious after the fact.
Like the Duluth example from the book, blaming the city for not hiring a bridge monitor before a flood happened.
Exactly. Before the flood, very few people thought it was necessary. After the flood, suddenly everyone felt they should have hired one, even when they were explicitly told to ignore the outcome. The bad outcome automatically made the prior decision seem negligent. We judge the quality of the decision based on whether the outcome was good or bad, not on the process or the information available at the time.
That's quite sobering. And what's really fascinating is that even experts, people who should know better, fall right into this trap. You'd think more knowledge would lead to better predictions, less bias.
You would think so, but often it doesn't quite work out that way. There are numerous studies showing that experts in various fields, like, say, stock pickers or political analysts, making long-term forecasts often perform no better, and sometimes even worse, than simple algorithms or just basic rules of thumb, or even monkeys throwing darts in some classic studies.
Seriously? Worse than algorithms?
Sometimes, yes, because their extra knowledge can actually fuel what Kahneman calls an enhanced illusion of skill. They become more confident in their intuition and judgment, even when the evidence shows those judgments aren't reliable predictors.
So more information doesn't always help. It can just make you more confident you're right, even when you're wrong.
Precisely. Think of Paul Meehl's classic work showing that simple statistical formulas often outperformed clinical psychologists' intuitive judgments in predicting patient outcomes, even when the psychologist had more detailed case information. Expertise doesn't automatically equal better prediction. Sometimes it just means more elaborate justifications for intuitive errors.
Wow. And I've definitely felt this myself, when trying to estimate how long a project will take. That feeling of, oh yeah, this time it'll be different. I can do it in 6 months. Yeah. Despite all evidence to the contrary. Is that the planning fallacy?
That is exactly the planning fallacy. We consistently make overly optimistic forecasts. We tend to focus on the best case scenario, our specific plans, and we neglect the statistical reality of similar projects in the past, the base rate.
Right, ignoring how long it actually takes most people to do something similar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kahneman shares his own experience trying to write a curriculum with colleagues. They estimated about 2 years. But when prompted to think about similar projects, the base rate suggested more like 7 to 10 years, with a 40% chance of failure.
Ouch.
And we often compound this with the sunk cost fallacy, throwing more time or money into a failing project because we've already invested so much and we hate to admit defeat.
Right, driving into the blizzard because turning back feels like admitting failure.
The key lesson here is always try to get an outside view. What happened when others tried this? Don't just rely on your optimistic inside view of your own specific plans.
So why don't we learn? If these biases are so common, why do we keep falling for them? Why are we so bad at spotting these patterns?
It comes back to System 1's love for causal stories and its difficulty with mere statistics. Take regression to the mean.
Okay, what's that again?
It's the statistical fact that extreme performances, whether unusually good or unusually bad, tend to be followed by performances closer to the average.
Right, like a golfer having an amazing round is likely to shoot closer to their average next time.
Exactly. But we instinctively look for causal explanations. Kahneman gives the example of flight instructors. They observed that when they praised a pilot for an exceptionally smooth landing, the next landing was usually worse. When they yelled at a pilot for a bad landing, the next one was usually better.
So they concluded
that punishment works better than praise.
But it was just regression to the mean.
Almost certainly. The praise didn't cause the worst landing, and the punishment didn't cause the better one. It was just the natural fluctuation around their average skill level. But our minds crave cause and effect stories, so we miss the statistical reality. Learning to recognize regression requires System 2 effort and, frankly, specific training.
Okay, moving on. Our feelings about things like money, gains, losses, they aren't purely logical either, are they? It feels like our emotions really drive the bus here. Kahneman's prospect theory dives into this, right? What's the core idea?
Yeah, prospect theory is huge. It basically says we don't evaluate outcomes like gains or losses in absolute terms. We evaluate them relative to a reference point, which is usually our current state, the status quo.
Okay.
And the really fascinating part is loss aversion. Losses loom much larger psychologically than equivalent gains. A loss feels about twice as painful as a gain of the same amount feels good.
Twice as powerful. Wow.
Roughly, yes. Which explains why people often turn down gambles that are actually slightly favorable, like a 50-50 chance to win $150 or lose $100. The fear of the $100 loss outweighs the potential $150 gain for many people.
That makes sense. We hate losing.
We really do. Or think about the example of Professor R and his wine collection. He owned bottles he wouldn't dream of selling for less than, say, $100. But if he didn't own them, he wouldn't consider buying them for more than $35.
The endowment effect. Just owning something makes it feel more valuable.
Exactly. Because giving it up now feels like a loss. And we're averse to losses. It's not just about the wine. It's about the pain of parting with something that's part of your endowment. So the key takeaway, we're wired to avoid losses much more strongly than we seek equivalent gains. And this shapes our choices in sometimes surprising ways.
It's amazing how just possessing something changes its value in our heads. And it's not just about gains and losses, is it? The way a problem is simply described or framed can completely change our choices, even if the underlying facts are identical.
Oh, absolutely. Framing effects are incredibly powerful. The classic Asian disease problem demonstrates this perfectly.
Right. Remind us how that goes.
Okay, so imagine there's an outbreak of a disease expected to kill 600 people. You're offered two programs. Program A, 200 people will be saved. Program B, there's a 1/3 probability that 600 people will be saved and a 2/3 probability that no one will be saved.
Okay, so a sure thing versus a gamble, framed in terms of saving lives.
Right. In this frame, most people choose Program A, the sure thing. They become risk averse.
Makes sense. Save the 200 for sure.
But now, consider the exact same scenario, just framed differently. Program C, 400 people will die.
Yeah.
Program D, there's a 1/3 probability that nobody will die and a 2/3 probability that 600 people will die.
So now it's framed in terms of lives lost. Same outcomes, just different words.
Exactly the same outcomes. But now, facing this frame, most people choose Program D, the gamble. They become risk-seeking to avoid the sure loss of 400 lives.
Wow. So just changing saved to lost flips the preference from certainty to gambling.
Completely flips it. It shows our preferences aren't necessarily based on the objective reality. They're often frame-bound. System 1 reacts differently to the emotional connotations of saving lives versus people dying, even when the numbers add up identically. It's a critical insight. How you frame a choice can drastically alter the decision.
And this idea of framing or maybe mental categories, it even affects how we think about money, doesn't it? Like mental accounting.
It does, yeah. Take the theater ticket example. If you buy a $10 ticket in advance and then lose the ticket on your way to the theater, are you likely to buy another $10 ticket?
Probably not. Feels like the show now costs $20.
Right. Many people say no. But what if you hadn't bought the ticket yet, and on your way to the theater, you lose a $10 bill from your wallet? Would you still buy the $10 ticket?
Oh, yeah, probably. Losing the cash feels unrelated to the ticket price. Annoying, but separate.
Exactly. Objectively, it's the same $10 loss in both scenarios. But in the first case, the lost ticket cost is mentally assigned to the theater show account, making the show seem too expensive. In the second case, the lost cash comes out of a general cash account, and the ticket still seems worth $10.
So we create these arbitrary mental budgets.
We do. And they can irrationally influence our spending and saving. It shows how context and framing shape even simple financial decisions.
This is all making me think. How do these biases relate to our overall happiness or well-being? If our judgments are so easily swayed, how does that affect how we remember our lives or predict our future happiness?
That's a really important question. And Kahneman distinguishes between two different selves that are relevant here. The experiencing self and the remembering self.
Okay, experiencing versus remembering.
The experiencing self is the one living life moment by moment. It's the one feeling the pain, the pleasure, the boredom right now. The remembering self is the one that, well, remembers experiences, tells the story afterward, and makes future decisions based on those memories.
And the remembering self isn't always accurate.
Not necessarily. Our memories are often quite distorted representations of our actual experiences. A key finding here is duration neglect.
Duration neglect.
Yeah, the actual length or duration of an experience seems to have surprisingly little impact on how we remember it later.
Really? So a long, unpleasant experience isn't remembered as much worse than a short one.
Not necessarily in proportion to its length. What matters much more for the remembering self is the peak-end rule. Memory is dominated by the most intense point, the peak, whether good or bad, and how the experience ends.
The peak and the end?
Right. The famous cold hand experiment illustrates this perfectly. People put their hand in painfully cold water. One trial was shorter, but consistently painful. Another trial was longer overall, but the last part involved slightly less cold water, making the end less painful.
Okay.
When asked which trial they'd prefer to repeat, most people chose the longer one.
The longer, more painful one overall. Just because the end was slightly better.
Exactly. The remembering self, focusing on the less painful end, overrode the experiencing self's total amount of suffering. It dictates our future choices, sometimes making us choose more total pain if the memory it creates is less unpleasant.
That's genuinely mind-bending. Our memories are actively curating our past in a biased way, and that's what guides our future choices. So, does this mean we're also bad at predicting what will actually make us happy? We might be miswanting things.
Precisely. This connects to the focusing illusion. When we think about how a certain factor like moving to a sunnier climate or getting a raise will affect our happiness, we tend to vastly overestimate its impact because we're focusing on it right now.
Like thinking Californians must be happier because of the weather.
Exactly. Studies show they aren't actually happier overall than, say, Midwesterners. But both groups think climate makes a big difference because when you ask the question, they focus on climate. We forget that most of the time, we won't be thinking about the climate. We'll be thinking about work, traffic, family, all the usual stuff.
So we make bad choices because we focus on the wrong things when predicting our future feelings.
Often, yes. It leads to miswanting. We might chase things that provide an initial thrill but quickly fade from our attention, like that fancy new car, while underestimating the lasting impact of things that continually demand our attention in positive ways, like strong social connections, maybe joining that weekly book club or volunteer group. The key insight for well-being is to think about where your attention will actually be directed over time. #outro.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today. We've taken this deep dive, uncovering how System 1, our fast, intuitive mind, is this incredible engine of efficiency, but also a breeding ground for predictable biases, heuristics, and illusions. And how System 2, our slower, logical self, the one we think is in charge, well, it's often just too lazy or too busy to step in and correct things.
Right. And it's crucial to remember, these aren't like personal failings. They're not about being unintelligent. They're fundamental features of how the human mind works.
Yeah, part of the standard operating equipment.
Yeah, exactly. And what's fascinating and actually hopeful is that acknowledging these biases isn't about being fatalistic, thinking, oh, well, we're doomed to be irrational. It's actually empowering.
How so?
Well, this whole field of understanding has led directly to concepts like libertarian paternalism, or maybe more popularly, nudging.
Nudging.
It's the idea of designing choices, designing environments in ways that gently push or nudge people towards making better decisions.
Yeah.
Decisions they would likely make for themselves if they had unlimited time and attention, but without actually restricting their freedom to choose otherwise.
Like automatic enrollment in retirement savings plans.
Perfect example. Or think about how changing the default option for organ donation dramatically increases donation rates in some countries. It's not forcing anyone, just changing the frame, changing the path of least resistance that System 1 naturally follows.
So it's about using our understanding of these systems to help ourselves and maybe society make better choices. Okay, so what does this all mean for you listening right now? Now that you're maybe a bit more aware of these invisible forces shaping your judgments, how might you nudge your own System 2 into action a bit more often? Maybe question those gut feelings sometimes? And how might you use this understanding to be a more insightful observer of the world, to start recognizing the cognitive illusions, the framing effects, the narratives that shaped not just our own choices, but maybe even public debates, political arguments, policy decisions?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, this isn't just about avoiding silly mistakes, is it? It's about the potential to make more informed, more intentional decisions for a richer, maybe more rational, and certainly more thoughtful life.